Yeah, you gotta get present.
Those videos come through.
Yep, we got them on there. So.
When I bought this company,
I got some.
it's a great business to start with.
Yeah, you're like a nonprofit, right? Yeah,
And my company broke. So I just got 24 on one side, 24 on the other side. Like I said, 48
Store that tries to support all of those things.
But also,
And over time, and when COVID hit, then it's education.
but eventually,
yeah.
a lot of money. We should have
I got two younger brothers.
Some to see which
I showed them that one place.
I started to get one half.
Hey,
Talk to them. Really sad to see
I'm just going to cover this up for now so that's not in his face. That's why we're doing
Oh, just
with the elevator, you know,
really nice
maybe gone one time, these guys are moving. And he says, we just find a place, trying to get like, provide a class, every once in a while.
yeah. I've been working like all I go in until just well, that I
I haven't gotten to look at it. Bad.
Sounds like a pretty good deal. What they're trying to do, you know.
Well, I don't think I can see back there.
Stuff like that. The city. Starting to get money to have these classes.
Yeah, we got a full house, so. I haven't counted yet. I haven't had a chance. All right, how's everybody doing? All right. So we'll get through this first stuff real quick so we can get on. First of all, we have several guests here tonight, I think. Several faces I've seen, so either guests or people that haven't been around for quite a while. If you're a guest, if you could raise your hand. How you doing, sir?
Yeah. Tom Hartwig.
And you've been here before long ago, correct? Is that right?
I had not.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of somebody else. And we had,
He was lucky enough this morning to come out and I busted out a couple of logs for him.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Ralph invited me to come, so I thought it was a good time to come.
Welcome to be here. Thank you for being here. Sorry, it's been a long day and then everything going on. So you notice we got a lot of people here. I think next month we need to move back further and have a couple more tables so we're not so crowded. And then we have a few new members.
My name's Mike Griffin, and this is my first meeting, so
Oh, Mike.
kind of a handy name, no professional.
And then you said you were going to join us.
Yeah.
So he was here last month and we didn't scare him off. So thanks for coming back. Oh, Bob, right? Bob, yeah. And then on the tables there, you'll see a proposed budget for the year. So the way our bylaws work, we have to, members need to approve when we're spending a lot of money. And our budget for the year is quite a bit of money. That way, the board doesn't just run things. You know, the membership still has a say in what's going on. These are all high estimates of what we would normally spend in a year. The only extra thing on here is getting the nonprofit registered. And what it is missing is anything having to do with opening a shop, because we don't have any idea how much we would need for that. And when it comes to that, those numbers will be brought forward membership to vote on at that time. So there's no reason to put that in this initial estimate for the year. And basically this allows the board to spend this money to make all this stuff happen. Name tags, our website, and then I had one in front of me there. Sorry, thank you. And then the registered agent and 501c3 is part of turning us into a nonprofit. Our mailbox, the web hosting, and then our picnic are basically our expenses for the year that we know we're going to have. Is there any question regarding this? Questions?
Well, maybe it's really not one pretty general question. I don't know what's too much going on. We're trying to start a guild then, but we have no idea whether it's gonna happen.
So right now we're just looking into getting a location. We have tools set up. We have everything except for a location. We have a couple of proposed places. One being at the Dream Center out with Destiny Church at the old Saint Benedictine campus, and then the other place being the old Joseph place. So right now it's just talking with different places, trying to find more options. That way we can have more that we can bring forth and say, hey, this is what we found, and try to come up with what's going to work best for us long term. We definitely want anything we do to be long term. So that's why this budget is just for normal operation until we get to that point and know what we need to do. Because until we get to that, we won't know how much we have to spend.
Sounds like a lot. I like the idea.
Yeah, our biggest expense, even with these two different locations, is just electrical. That's the electrical and insurance, starting our insurance, which is, gonna be significant, so.
Are you still looking for places? Are you still, kind of searching?
Yes, yeah, we wanna make sure before we make a
So I got
decision,
some
there's,
places that out there by,
you wanna get together later and?
yeah,
And,
let's do that, yeah.
okay,
Okay.
alright. Yeah, definitely, and if you have know of any place that may be out there that could be an option, definitely, if you could say something, that way there's more to bring to the table, that way we can figure out what's gonna work best for us, long term. Any other questions, concerns? I'd like to make a motion to, approve the budget as written for, this 2023 calendar year.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. That's our,
All those that didn't see it.
oh, I'm sorry, there,
See, if we had two, I got smoky Wi-Fi.
oh, it turned into the napkin?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. So real quick, Lon Scott has this tool for sale, if any, it's a Bosch. This is the Bosch Platinum, 18 volt. It's just a tool and battery.
And I said just sell it as bare tool, I'm only asking $40.
So if anybody's interested, please, see Lon afterwards. It's up here if you wanna check it out.
That's cheap.
I've got another one and that's been sitting in the drawer, so it's time to move.
And then dues, if you haven't paid dues yet, please see, Bob there in the back. He'll,
How much are they?
$30. Yeah, that hasn't changed. It's still the same.
I don't think so.
Lon. And, and see me, if you're not getting our emails, you should get at least, I send out a reminder about meetings, and then the newsletter comes out, every month. If you're not getting those, please let me know and we can figure out what's going on. Maybe it's going to your spam folder, or maybe we got your email in wrong. So if you're not getting those, please let me know. Yes, budget. All right, anybody have anything else before we get started? No? Okay, bye-bye.
Well, tonight, I'm very happy to announce that we have a speaker tonight. Brian Knox, he comes to us from Champaign, Illinois. He owns the Cedar Wood Shop in Champaign. He's owned it for 2 years. I asked him, how should I introduce you? He's kind of a neat little background here. He actually is an artist his entire life, so that's his focus. He was a jeweler for 30 years in the Champaign area, and he's a musician. And you just said you'll take away from here, but I guess your hashtag is you love to play with wood then. So I'll turn it over to you then.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Brian.
As you just found out, I have been an artist my whole life, and I started in high school with a class making jewelry, and thought I liked that, and found somebody, worked for him for a little bit, and went away to school for jewelry and became a gemologist, and came back to Champaign and finished up my art degree at Parkland College, and I was an artist, or was a jeweler for 30 years, and did custom jewelry design. Most of what I sold we designed and made, so worked with my hands and tools. And also being an artist, I'm a musician, so I played in bands for years, and was a jeweler by day, a jeweler by day, rock star by night. And so for half of that time, I was playing music and started to collect equipment, and tried to make the band sound better and get bigger equipment and better equipment, and I forgot to stop collecting equipment. So before you know it, I'm renting it out to other bands and then little festivals, and since I had a jewelry business, that I was making my living with that, so any money I made on the road and with music, I could reinvest it and build it up, and it builds up real quickly when you don't have any overhead. So, you make $300 and 240 of that is profit, so you buy more stuff and it grows real fast, and so that was fun. The internet came in and retail changed, and it was not as much fun to be a jeweler, so I sold off the inventory and bought speakers and went on the road, and so have been doing that for now 30 years, and really enjoyed doing that. But I think of you know, making jewelry or building houses or making furniture or other things like that, and they're all really similar because you still have to have a creative vision. You have to be able to get it down on paper and work out the details of how it's all going to fit and what materials you're going to use, how to attach them, and with jewelry, I'd have a jeweler's saw and I'd cut things out and solder them together and sand them and polish them and set stones and you know, what is the finish that what's it going to look like? In a house, you know, an architect will design it and figure out what the foundation is going to be and the structure of it, and you know, the plumbing and the wiring and what's the finish and how does it look at the end. And a, you know, a chest of drawers or something it's the same process. It's different tools, but it is a similar concept there. So I have always loved to learn things, and I just keep going from one thing to the next, and I'm, you know, a jack of all trades and I'm a master of some. But I find ways to figure out how they're related to each other. Because one thing you learn here, somewhere down the line you go, oh, I can use that there, and that helps me to do that. And that's been really fun to continue to learn, and I think lifelong learning ultimately is the goal. And I think a lot of people that I know that work their whole lives and really don't have a hobby, and you know, they get done working and what do they do with themselves? And I think that if you weren't doing that your whole life, you're not gonna retire and go, well, I think I'm gonna pick up golf. And golf is so hard to start with. If you haven't been doing it for 20 years, it's not much fun. And why you would wanna do that when you're 60 or 70, start that 20-year process. But I found I have too many hobbies because I like playing music and I like working with my hands. I like designing and building things, and I like physical activities and being outside. And all of those things, I think, create a more interesting life and a fuller life. And I've really enjoyed all the things that I've done and all the things I've learned, and it's been really fulfilling, and I have no regrets. And I would rather go out to the garage and do something than sit on my couch and watch idiot TV for a while. You have something to show for the time you're spending in your life, and that time is the only thing that you have for your life. So it's been really fun to do those kinds of things. I brought a whole bunch of different things that I could easily put into the car and bring over to show you. I would be the first person to say I am not a master woodworker. I'm an artist that likes to play with wood. And it's really fun to just make it up as I go. And when all the concerts stopped, I was just dead in the water for doing sound and light stuff, and wondering what I was going to do with myself during COVID. And I already owned a sawmill that I bought because I have these big, I got probably 20 Osage orange trees on my property where my warehouse is, an old hedgerow, and they're literally, you know, 2 or 3 feet in diameter. So I bought a sawmill, figured, well, I'll, you know, cut them up and do something with it, and I did, and sold some of the wood to the CU Wood Shop. But I started to just saw up all the logs that I'd accumulated, thinking that CU Wood Shop would be a good customer because I'd sold them some wood before, and then they decided that they were going to go out of business. So I thought, well, gee, if I'm going to be in the wood business, maybe they have some of the big equipment that most woodworkers can't fit in their garage, a 7 horsepower, 3-phase, rah! So I started to buy some of those things because I have a warehouse that has, you know, 1600 amp 3-phase 480 volt service, so I can handle almost anything you can imagine, and it's a 40,000 square foot building. So from that standpoint, I had, you know, some place to put it, and lots of time on my hand. If you're looking for a building, one of my recommendations is look for something that gives you room to expand, and don't limit yourself to, you know, a smaller thing, because in business, inevitably, you end up growing and then you go, oh, I gotta go do it all over again. And that's my advice to you. But I applaud you for trying to take that next step and have a facility that you can all work together. I was telling a couple of people at dinner that I started off in a loft downtown where I shared it with 4 or 5 other artists, and it was really great because it kept the overhead really low, but I would go up there all the time and work, and nobody was there. And I could work and do my thing and come and go, and when there was somebody else there, it was really fun to have some company while you're there working and doing what you like to do. So that was really cool, and to have a club where you can all go and have a clubhouse that have it, you know, swap lies and show, you know, I tell people that there's no such thing as trade secrets. You can find anything you want to on the internet or talking to people, and, you know, it's time that's expensive, you know, but with YouTube University, it's pretty cool to find out about all sorts of different things, and then talk to people that have tried it and work out some of the bugs with that. So that's really cool. But I went to, you know, start buying some of the equipment, and I ended up buying the whole business, and then renovated my warehouse and moved it all over there. I was so fortunate to be able to hire the people that were running the business, so that it was almost like a turnkey. I didn't have to train anybody. And in business, my whole problem had always been finding good help. And the turnover, once you got somebody trained, they'd move on to go do something else, and you're back to square one, trying to find somebody else to do that. But I've got a great staff, and CU Woodshop is a superstore for woodworkers in Champaign. And this is my shameless commerce part of the talk. It's really a cool store for woodworkers, and it's like a Home Depot for woodworkers, and it's 15,000 square feet. We have an amazing selection of exotic wood, an amazing selection of domestic wood. With the sawmill, I save trees from being firewood and cut them up into live edge slabs and sell them. And we have a 3,000 square foot shop across the street in a 9,000 square foot barn that I have the sawmill and a kiln that I built. And you know, you cut a log into 1 inch slice, and it takes a year for it to air dry. But if you have a kiln, it takes a month, and that's really cool. If it's 2 inches, it takes 2 years to air dry, and, you know, 2 months to kiln dry. So that was really cool to be, and I'd done construction along the way, so I thought, oh, I'll just build a kiln, so I did. We also have a slab miser, which is a big router table with a 5-inch carbide cutter that will flatten a 5-foot by 12-foot tabletop or bar or all sorts of things. And that's really cool because wood, when it dries, warps and twists and does all sorts of things, but to be able to flatten it out once it's dried. But so often people will say, yeah, I've got this log, it's been down for 5 years, I know it's dry. And I said, in the middle, no, it's not dry at all. It's just as wet as when it died 5 years ago. Because it's, you know, but then oak takes twice as long as, you know, walnut or cherry or other things. So it's been an interesting learning experience. And as I said, I really like learning things. So it's been really fun to be back in business. And I was in retail before, so it was sort of a natural progression to jump back in and have the store there. With the shop, we do custom milling for people and have a 25-inch thickness planer and a 16-inch joiner and a industrial saw stop and a big, what we call the Raptor, which is a big resawing bandsaw with a 3-inch blade that's, you know, 172-inch diameter. And I just bought a wide belt sander that's a 43-inch, you know, width for sanding stuff. So it's really nice for people that don't have the bigger equipment to come and buy things and have us do some of the basic milling stuff to make it easy for them to then take it and cut it down or glue it together or make things and that kind of stuff. So that's been really fun. I brought a number of different things. I don't really sell anything, I just make them for fun and show people some different things, but let me just show you a couple of things. This is a little TV table that I made, and it is just live edge cherry from a cherry tree that I sliced, but it doesn't have any glue, it just has 6 screws. And what I did was to make dovetails so that these side pieces fit into a dovetail in this center spline, and then there's a dovetail in the top and the bottom that it slides into, and then it's just got 3 screws holding the top and the bottom in there, which I thought was sort of ingenious to do. I early on started to play with a bandsaw cutting boards, and it's really a cool way to do it. It looks like it's really hard to make all the pieces fit each other, but you put double stick tape and I took walnut and cherry and I double stick tape them together, run them through the jigsaw or the bandsaw. You take the top and the bottom, the top and the bottom, and it fits together like a puzzle, which is really quick and easy, but it really makes a nice design. I then cut it sideways, and then this last one is just one cut that I cut a little thin strip of wood that I glued in there so that it would bend and make that line in there. So that was really cool. Some people have said, yeah, but you know, wood expands in different directions, and you know, you have a problem with changing the directions of all of those things. So I thought, yeah, but what I did was to take and make a backing so that not only are they just glued together, but they're supported from the whole back of that. So it's got a solid back. And then what I did was to take and run it through my table saw like this and make a slot in there that I could glue in another piece of wood, of accenting wood, to make a nice little sort of racing stripe down the side of there. And then with the breadboards, took and put dominoes in there to help to hold that all together. So that was sort of a cool project. Same thing with these guys. By taking and putting all the wood together, putting dominoes into those and gluing them all together and making one big piece there. Making the handles, laying it out, and then just cutting it on the bandsaw and go to the spindle sander and sand it, and then again putting dominoes in from the side so that the sort of breadboard ends work out really well. One of the cool things about having the wood shop is we have an amazing selection of wood, and I love just going over and I'll pick something that I haven't worked with before and go, I wonder how this works, so that I can tell people, yeah, this is an African wood called Ibira, and then there's bloodwood, and then this is actually just curly cherry, and it's got a really, really nice grain, rippled grain to it.
Brian, we could pass those around.
Yeah.
Everybody can take a close look.
No, you're welcome to.
Yeah.
This is actually the first one that I made. We got in what's called flame birch, and you see the white wood on the sides here. It just shines, and it's really, really good stuff. And then the curly cherry in the middle with walnut, and then bubinga around the sides of it. So I just make it up as I go. I'm not a cabinet maker. I'd love to learn how to do more of that. But you know, I found that each step of the way I try something different, and I might need a new tool, and I integrate that into the shop and continue to learn how to do different things. I bought a lathe, one of the early things that I bought as the business was going out of business, and I hadn't done any lathe turning before. But it's been really fun to glue up lots of little pieces and turn them on the lathe and do all sorts of different things. And so I make little wine bottle stoppers, and these guys are actually pretty cool because they're beer bottle openers. But it's a lot different. And with this heavy flat, they stand up by themselves, which is really cool. but I love looking at the colors of the wood and tying in the different colors together so that they work together. It's the artistic part of what I do. And I'll pass those around. This one was really cool because I was showing somebody that does cutlery. And I showed him the flame birch, and he thought it was really cool. So I cut off a piece and I said, here, just take it and see how you like it. And he went right home that night and forged a blade and made a handle and came back a day or two showing me this knife that he made from that. And I thought, well, that's really cool. And so I ended up making a bottle opener, and I turned it on the lathe, and then I went to the bandsaw and cut this out, and with the spindle sander shaped that so that it really fit my hand nicely, so that it's sort of a compound, woodworking and lathe working, but it's more like a knife handle or something along that line. So, there's some other things here. This is actually a pretty cool deal. I had an anniversary, the 2-year anniversary for the store was November 14th. And so I had a open house and had some specials and a whole bunch of things. I was just going down to North Carolina to get exotic wood. And I went and picked a whole bunch of just oddball things that I wanted to bring back, unusual things that most people hadn't seen before. And this is actually a Coolabah burl from Australia. And it's really dense and really interesting wood, but you can see a little bit of the outside of that burl. When I was talking to Bob, he was asking me about epoxying, and I told him that I'd come and give a quick overview, and at some point, if you're interested, I'd be happy to come back and give you a more in-depth demonstration. A lot of times we have little workshops and seminars on Saturday afternoons when, we can have people come in and have demonstrations and stuff like that. But epoxying has become really popular, and this is actually some of that Osage orange. And you can see that this is a newer piece that's more orange, but it turns brown in time. This is an older piece that I had cut 10 years ago. And it was interesting to see the difference in color between that different aging process. But this part used to be over here, and I cut it and moved it around, and it looked like a riverbank going down to a stream. So I thought, well, I'll try to accentuate that, and so I made it into the cutting board. And a lot of times, people will take and they'll build a form, and they'll pour the whole form with epoxy, and then sort of cut it out and have epoxy around the edges and other things like that. But epoxy's expensive enough. I thought, well, you know what? If I just made like a little bathtub where I wanted the epoxy and then just filled that bathtub, it won't take as much epoxy, and it'll be a nice sort of river table that is in the middle of there. And so that's what I did. And so once I made this whole form, I took shellac, and I shellacked the top part where the epoxy would come up over that, so that the epoxy wouldn't leach into the wood and leave, a little ghost of where the epoxy was. But by sealing it with shellac, then I have sealed that part of it. Then what I did was to take hot glue and build a little dam up around the edge of there so that I could overfill it, because when the epoxy cools, it's going to shrink. And if you just filled it up to the surface, it'll shrink, and you got to grind the whole surface down to the bottom where the epoxy is. The other thing is, if there's any dust or air bubbles or anything like that, they're up above my finished product. So I can effectively overfill it and then grind it down flush with the rest of the wood there, and that works out well. Once I did that, then there's several different kinds of epoxy. So you're all familiar with epoxy glue that we've used for years, but epoxy for boat building and other things have become really popular in woodworking. And there's faster setting epoxy and slower setting epoxy. And one of the problems with epoxy is, in the curing process for a lot of them, heat is how it cures the epoxy. Because you have resin and hardener, and the hardener chemically reacts with the resin and it cures it by heat. Well, the more epoxy that's there, the more heat is generated, and when heat's there, it's going to expand, and then it's going to contract, and it'll crack and do all sorts of weird things. And so a faster drying epoxy generates more heat, and you can't fill as big an area because of that heat. And so if you have little fissures and stuff in one of the cutting boards that I sent around, it has little places where I put a little bit of epoxy into little cracks in that part of there. The fast curing epoxy works really well because there's not much volume there, and it'll set up in an hour or two or 3 or 4 hours depending on the thickness of that. For something like this, what I did was to take the fast drying epoxy. West Systems is one that has a number of different hardeners so you can control how quickly it's going to set up. And I just painted the whole inside just to seal it so no air bubbles can come through the wood, make sure that it's all not going to dribble out someplace. A lot of times people will use tape and sort of tape off things, but the problem is the heat from the epoxy loosens up the glue of the tape, and then the tape falls off and the epoxy all dribbles out the bottom and glues it to your workbench, and then you have a new type of a workbench. So I use hot glue a lot to just sort of seal things and do that kind of stuff. In fact, the other day somebody brought in a piece of a slab of cedar and just wanted us to fill holes and stuff like that. And we had hot glued cardboard along the bottom of it and done another run of hot glue around the edge, and inevitably it was a big enough strip that we didn't get a good seal there, and it started to ooze out one part, so I was able to take hot glue and sort of encapsulate that part of it, and it came out in another place, and we couldn't get it to seal because it kept coming out of there. So I put a rim of hot glue around it and another piece of cardboard and glued the cardboard all the way around it and was able to put my thumb in the dam there, and that saved the day there. So that was fun. But once I could seal the whole inside of there, then what I did was to mix up a little bit slower curing epoxy, and half of it I made purple, and then in 4 little cups I mixed up 4 different colors other than purple. So I poured the body of this in purple, and then the yellow and the orange and the lavender and the whatever color, I put just little drops, each one of those different ones. And then when it was starting to set up, I came back with a little probe and just made a little swirl out of those drops into a design and let it set up. And then the next day, that bottom area is only not even a 1/4 of an inch thick, but that's the design there. And then I took epoxy that is a lot slower curing, a 72-hour cure, and it almost no heat, and all the air bubbles has plenty of time to come out of there. And I was able to fill the whole thing up above the surface to where the hot glue is, and make sure that it's level, because if it's just a little bit tipped, it's going to run downhill and give you problems. But 3 days later, it was all cured and set, and it's crystal clear, which is really nice. And then I could sand it down, and then took car finishing, sandpaper up to 2000 grit, and then buffed it with paint. 3M has a whole bunch of, when you repaint a car, you're polishing it out till it's shining, and you can do the same thing with epoxy. So that's my quick epoxy demonstration.
Have you seen any of that, if you get down to, I know you gotta finish sanding and polishing on it, if you gotta have extra thickness, is that machinable at all, like planing or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, in fact, I use the Slabmizer a lot because it's a big router head, and I'm able to just level the whole thing off so that it's flat, and then I can come back and sand it. And I'll sand it up to, I don't know, 200 or 300 grit, and then I probably will seal the wood, because all of the, you know, sort of polishing slurry and some of the other things, will get into the grain, and then I gotta figure out how to get it out of the grain, but if I can seal that. One of the things I'm gonna demonstrate is Rubio Monocoat. Is anybody familiar with Rubio Monocoat or used it before? It's actually a really cool finish because it is linseed oil and beeswax and an accelerator to help make the linseed oil dry quicker. And I'll get into that in just a little bit, but that's a really cool product because it's very fast to do your finish. Literally in 10 or 15 minutes, you're done with your finish. It dries in 24 hours, and in 4 days, it's completely cured. And they designed it for hardwood floors. So think about the punishment and stuff the hardwood floor gets. Now, it's not gonna make your wood any harder. The hardness of the wood is what's really protecting it. But it seals the wood, and it protects the wood. And it actually bonds with the grain of the wood because it gets down into the grain and then it dries. And you can't put 2 coats of Rubio because it won't bond to itself. You can sand it down a little bit and put another coat on it because you've gotten down into the wood fibers so that it will bond. The only thing that you can do is to put a maintenance oil because Rubio is a flat finish. And if you want it to be a little bit shinier, a little bit more gloss, then you can put a maintenance oil on top of that as a second step the next day. So almost everything here, with the exception of the TV table, has Rubio on it. So all of the platters and cutting boards, I've used Rubio on because I like it. I've done staining and polyurethaning and, sanding and recoating and trying to, for days get a finish. And this is almost a miraculous finish, which is,
How is it for repairing?
it's great
Yeah,
because if,
just,
well, there's
oil and-
2 or 3, what's that?
Say it's linseed oil and beeswax and an accelerator, it's.
Yeah, that's it. But there's 2 or 3 answers to that. One is, if it is just worn and just looking a little ragged, there's something that they call Restore. And Restore you can put on there, and it literally sort of remelts the beeswax and the linseed oil and moves it around and makes it look nice again. If it is scuffed or scratched, you can sand it out and reapply it, and it'll match itself. You don't have to strip it, you don't have to refinish it.
You just do that area?
You just do that area, and it looks like it originally was there. And if you really want to, you can scuff the whole thing up a little bit and reapply it and do the same thing there. You can't use chemical cleaners on it because chemicals will melt linseed oil or beeswax, and they have something that they call soap that you mix up a tablespoon with a quart of water and a spritzer bottle, and if you've used it on a table, you just spritz it with that and wipe it down, and it keeps it looking nice. So it's a pretty cool product. I think they developed it in Sweden or someplace like that, but.
Kinda like you use it on bowls and things you eat out of.
Yeah, they recommend that you don't use it on cutting boards because it just bonds with the wood fibers. You can't really reapply it very easily. And if you cut in through it, bacteria can get down past that and get into the wood. So on a cutting board, they recommend a walrus oil or a walnut oil or mineral oil or something that you cutting board oil. But aside from that, yeah,
Miraculous, huh?
it is. It is pretty cool. Any questions? What's that?
What's it called?
Rubio Monocoat. So,
Regarding the bar top epoxy, is there a recommended brand you ideally find?
there are a number of different ones. Mirror Coat is one of them. 50/50 is another one, and bar top coating is a cool finish for something that's going to take a lot of punishment because it's almost indestructible.
You prefer the 1-to-1 or 2-to-1?
It just depends on the brands. Each manufacturer has their own you know, formula, and some of them are a 2-to-1, some of them are 1-to-1. They're designed to do that. We sell deep pour, we sell ecopoxy. Both of those don't have VOCs, and the ecopoxy doesn't use heat, but both of those are a 72-hour cure for that. A bar top is a little bit different, and that a mirror coat is a real heavy viscous epoxy that you pour onto the top and paint it, and it oozes over the edges, and you have to sand all of the little drips off the bottom of there, but it makes a really thick epoxy coat. You come back with a torch to pop the air bubbles and make it look nice, and it's an indestructible, you know, for a bar table or a bar. It's a plastic coating, which has its own application. And I'll say, you know, there's varnishes and paints and lacquers, and each one has its own place. And I certainly advocate, you know, any or all of those depending on what it is you're trying to do. Polyurethane has a very obvious, you know, spar varnish and all sorts of other things. If it's going to be something that's, you know, a marine a finish, there's lots of different tools in your toolbox, and of which this is one. So from that standpoint, we, as I said, on Saturdays, a lot of times we have little workshops and seminars, and sometimes this is how you sharpen your tools, or this is how this Festool domino works, or other times it's wood terming demonstration or epoxy or whatever. But it's great to learn new things and be exposed to those things and be able to ask questions.
Brian, do you have like a list of the dates and the names of the seminars you do for this year?
Not really.
Well, how can we get a copy?
We have emails that we send out, and if you want to go to the website and sign up for our email list, we let people know.
Okay.
We've got somebody that does wood carving that's going to be doing a week-long sort of gallery, and he has carvings of animals that are endangered animals, and he's got 50 wood carvings. Should be really cool, but that's the beginning of, I think, April.
Okay.
Where is your big tool warehouse in relationship to the store?
The old store,
Yeah.
it's not quite a mile away from there. We are very conveniently located near the highway, so if you go up
Okay.
to 74, you get off at Prospect Avenue, and it's 4 or 5 blocks off the highway. So it's a little bit hard to find because I have my own industrial park, and the whole store is set back from the road. It's not like Lowe's or Home Depot where you drive right into the parking lot. But once you found us, there's lots of parking and lots of room and lots of store there. So that's a really cool thing. So let me actually just pull this table out into the middle here some, and I'll show you how Rubio Monocoat works. Yep, and I don't need any salt or sugar.
Pepper?
Yeah, I don't need pepper either.
You're missing out on something.
It's It's a spice of life. So yesterday I made this flag holder for somebody whose brother or brother-in-law or somebody was a veteran. And I thought, well, that might be a good opportunity to give you the demonstration. There are several mistakes that people make with Rubio because you don't need very much of it at all. It is a very, very thin coating that you end up with. And the mistakes people make is they mix up too much because you don't need much. They put too much on and they don't wipe enough off. It just literally bonds with the wood, and as long as you get the wood wet, you wipe it all off till it won't come off anymore. And literally, one of these little jars will do 10 square feet, depending on the wood grain. Yeah, so it's $6, but you can do, I could do this whole table with this. It's not unusual for me to just put a little tiny bit in, and it's a 3-to-1 mixture. And 3 parts of the oil to 1 part accelerator. And some people will take a syringe or a measuring cup or something, but more times than not, I just estimate that. And I sanded this all to, I don't know, 180 or 220. And you use a little 3M applicator to apply it. And it's a non-scratch kind of a deal. But more times than not, I will take and just cut a little piece off with my utility knife. And then I'm off and running. So I've mixed up 3-to-1 of this. I'll get a little bit on here. And then really all you need to do is to get it all
Is there a smell to it?
a little bit. It's not terrible. And literally it's linseed oil and beeswax. You could eat it if you really wanted to. I don't know why you would want to, but it's not anything that can hurt you, which is pretty cool.
Linseed oil or boiled linseed?
Well, it is probably boiled linseed oil, because just straight linseed oil will never dry. But
And you still find raw linseed oil?
what's that?
Can you still find raw linseed oil?
Oh, probably. I know artists use it. I don't really have any great use or need for it.
What if you want to color or stain?
It has about 30 different colors, and I brought some here to
Okay.
show you.
Can
And
you
that's,
add trans tint to it?
what's that?
Can you add trans tint to it?
I don't know. I've never tried that. But it comes with enough different colors. I brought a couple of colors and another piece of cherry that I can show you how that works. Okay. So I've gotten the whole thing wet now. And
Is there a pot life to your mixture?
what's that?
Is there a pot life to your mixture?
Yeah, you know, in a few hours it will start to set up, and the next day anything that's left in that is dried or skimmed over. And there have been times when I had some left over and I needed to do something with a bottle stopper, and I was able to take the skim off of it the next day, but it dries pretty quickly. So you don't, and that's what I was saying, the mistake you make is you mix up too much and you waste it, you put too much on, and then you don't wipe it off enough.
And you put a color right on top of what you've done?
No, but it comes colored. So you just pick the color. And the cool thing is that it comes in a lot of different colors and it's all the same stuff. So you could mix up custom colors if you wanted to. The only problem is you better make sure that you mix up enough the first time, because getting the same mixture.
Colors can blend together.
Yeah, it's like paint. So I'm done with my finish. That's it. Ta-da! And it's a nice finish.
You said that it dries flat. All your pieces are not flat. What'd you put over those to make them satin?
They also have a maintenance oil that I have here, and if I was to do that, The next day, I would come back and mix a 3-to-1 with the maintenance oil, and I'd apply that over the dried coating. And I would probably not wipe it off quite as much. I'd leave just a very thin film of the maintenance oil, and it gets a little shinier. And once it's sealed, it works out well, but you can wipe the maintenance off too much, and then you've taken it all off, and it is still flat.
And do you wax over this, like on a tabletop?
Nope. The real secret to this is to just stretch it out as far as you can.
The little bottles you have there, those are the bottles of color mix?
Yeah, and it comes in big ones with color also. I just brought some of those along. I mean, you can buy it in 1 liter. They have something called hybrid wood protector that's for exterior use, and they use it on the outside of houses and other things like that. And it's a little bit different mixture.
That cherry, it'll continue to darken down with age?
Yeah.
That won't inhibit or stop that, right?
No. It'll get a nice aging, but it seals it. You know, even the Osage orange will turn brown. In fact, I think it was Thomas Jefferson had a piece of furniture in his estate, and they thought it was mahogany or something. It was really dark, and they finally had to repair it and found out it was Osage orange, that had just gotten so dark that they didn't know what it was. But, you know, the Paduke that is in this one cutting board was nice and orange, and it slowly turned brown. You know, Purple Heart is purple for a while, but it slowly does its own thing. That's life. So, but that is pretty much how this works.
Did you save any of the limbs off of the Osage orange?
You know, I bought the property that I am in, and it had been neglected for 8 or 10 years, and all of those.
The reason I ask is that the small pieces make tremendous mallets.
Yes. If you want some, come and get them. I got all sorts of that, and I got brand new ones. So,
Apply that with dyed wood.
you know, as long as you had the access to the grain, I don't know about the dyed woods, but it comes in colors, and you can get all different colors from that. So from that standpoint, I don't know that you would want to do that. What would you use that? What would the application be?
To keep it purple.
To keep it purple? You can try it. I haven't done that personally, but you never know.
You started talking about how much the stuff costs.
Yeah, what would a kit, you know, if you wanted a kit of choices and that, what would the cost be?
You know, I think they make some. I haven't bought an inventory to any of them, but they have a small set and a bigger set that has all the colors.
Do you
And
sell
it's-
them at your store?
I do, yeah. And it's, I don't know, $200 or $300 for, you know, the whole gamut.
Do you have employees there that'll give your demo like you are?
Yeah. Or I'm happy to stop what I'm doing, and, you know, it's not unusual that somebody says, oh, I wanna, you know, do something with this color, and I said, well, come on over to the shop and we'll do some samples. And I'll take them over there, and I've got most of the colors in the shop, and I will, get a piece of white oak or a piece of cherry or whatever they're trying to do, and I will, you know, do a swatch, you know, with them, so that we can see what they want, and then they're thrilled, and I have a good customer, and they have a sale, and that works out really well. So,
It doesn't seem like it would fill like an open grain oak, like it would fill the grain very well.
it doesn't fill the grain, and if you want to do something like that, I would get, you know, a filler that you can work into the grain.
I mean, for like a tabletop.
Yeah. No, but I use it on oak and ash and other things like that with a grain like that. So here's the other part. And that's all done. So tomorrow it'll be ready to put a flag in and a piece of glass. So I brought another one here, and I'm not gonna mix up the accelerator with it, cause it's just for a demonstration and there's no point. This, I'm gonna, you know, finish and give to somebody. If I can get this open. So it is an oil mixture, and you need to make sure that you shake it up real well to get it all mixed back together. But this is mahogany. And that's what the color is.
You have any mahogany at the store?
Tons of it. Mahogany and sapelli and teak and olive wood and
Do you have yellow heart?
no, we haven't been able to get that. I've got a couple substitutes for that, and one is Movingi, which is a pretty interesting wood, which is a yellow wood. We've been trying to get yellow heart, but have not had much success in that.
You're putting a different color on top of a color?
No, I just put a little tiny dab on here, and I wanted to do the whole surface of this.
So if you want any kind of sheen, you gotta put that maintenance stuff on top of it.
Well, it just makes it a little shinier, a little more depth to the finish, and it brings out a little bit more shine.
So this being a, you know, a finished design for wood floors, is this, you know, did you see this somewhere else, or did you just kinda have, you know, have that there and thought, you know, I'll try it for this and see how it works out?
Well, no, they've been selling it for woodworking,
Are they?
and, you know, I started to watch some of the different channels on YouTube and saw people using that. Odie's oil is another one. There's a bunch of different finishes. This is probably the easier one. But and if you go on the internet, you can see they have shootouts with Rubio Monocoat, Odie's oil, some of the other finishes, and they pour wine on it, and they do an abrasion test, and they do, you know, and then they say, oh, well, in my opinion, I think that, so,
Yeah.
but.
Do you have any experience with some of the specialty waxes like Odie's oil?
Yeah. I haven't used them a whole lot, but it's nice to get a, you know, a little bit higher shine out of some of the finishes with wax. And wood turners like to do, you know, put a little bit spit polish on things and seal it a little bit more. With this, I have been very pleased with it just as, you know, a finished finished product. Especially with the maintenance oil. And this other one is the maintenance oil that you do the exact same way, but it just gives a little more depth and a little more luster to it. So, we do have a very nice selection of Craig and Festool and Rockler and Sawstop and, you know, a whole bunch of different tools. Oliver is a line that I brought in, and it used to be that in all the industrial arts, you know, shops and all the high schools, they had Oliver equipment. They're from 1904 or 18 something or other. And then they went up into big industrial machines, and about, maybe 10 years ago, they came back down into the high-end woodworking market.
Still the same company.
Did somebody
What's
ask if they stopped Jet? Did somebody say that? Ask that?
I asked.
Okay.
Yeah,
You stopped Jet
yeah, we carry Jet
and Rikon?
and Rikon. We sell a lot of Rikon.
Is Ricon's from Canada, isn't
I don't think they're from Canada. But I'm trying to think where their office is.
I bought from your store, I bought a Ricon tabletop bandsaw.
Uh-huh.
And Lee Valley right now has a set of 3 blades for that.
Yeah.
And they are coming out of Canada.
Oh, okay.
Kim, Kim was the young lady that helped me with that.
Yeah, Kim is great.
Yeah.
I love Kim. But Oliver, Powermatic is made in the same factory as Oliver in Taiwan.
Ask him if he has any-
But it's Oliver's factory that's making Powermatic, which is pretty funny. And not only are they less expensive than Powermatic, but they are blue instead of yellow. So. Any other questions that anybody
Yeah,
has?
one piece you didn't show us with the routing.
Oh, yeah. I carry several different CNC machines. And at Parkland in Champaign, they have a class that they teach CNC. And I took it so that I could learn how to use my CNC machine. And this is my final project for that.
I do a lot of wood burning now. If I wood burn this piece and then put the woody Lamont coat over it, would it bring out the wood burn look?
Probably.
That would be a good idea.
Because it'll seal it.
Yes.
It's always never ceased to amaze me how ingenious woodworkers are. And some of them are wood turners, some of them are carvers, some of them are wood burners, some of them are cabinet makers, some of them are hobby, you know, make cutting boards. And it's really cool to meet all of the woodworkers and talk to them and find out what they're into. And I say, well, what are you working on? And sure enough, the phone comes out and they say, hey, here's something that I made. And I really love talking to them and seeing, you know, what they do.
Yeah, if you go back in our videos, cause you had, was it Kerry come down?
Yeah.
A little over a year ago, and he showed
The shaper.
the shaper origin. We have that on our YouTube, if anybody wants to watch that.
That's a cool thing, you know. And with the CNC machine, you're limited to the amount of space that you can cut on. But the shaper, once you put the tape down, there's one video where they're doing a music staff along the floor in a music room. And literally it's 12 feet wide, and they cut out the notes and you know, put it all together and just,
Amazing.
it is truly amazing. And it's pretty exciting to see some of the technology. And, you know, SawStop is another one that, to have a saw that senses the electricity in your finger and shuts the saw down if your finger gets close. If you get a chance, go online and look up Time Warp from the Discovery Channel. They interview the guy who invented SawStop. And they do the hot dog, you know, deal where they shove a hot dog into there. And then they have high-speed video, he sticks his finger into the table saw, and it works. And boy, was he ready.
I go through a lot of hot dogs.
I think I could do a French finger first.
This just has color on it.
This is what I put my finger.
No, 24 hours from now, it'll be completely dry. In 4 days, it'll be completely cured. So it's a finished, that's my finish.
But all you did was use the little bottle, right?
Yeah,
So you didn't use the two bigger bottles on that?
well, it's the same thing. This
Oh, it
just
is the
has,
same
this
thing.
just has color in it.
Oh, gotcha.
So this is mahogany as opposed to, see, here's cherry with the pure.
Yeah,
About
right.
80 or 90% of the time, I just use the pure, because it really brings out the color of the wood and that kind of stuff. But you can see the difference in the mahogany one to just the pure cherry. And they're both, they actually literally came off of the same board.
And if you want it to be exterior, what do you add?
There's another product that they make that is called Hybrid Wood Protector. And it is an exterior Rubio that's not exactly the same formula because it's designed to be outside. They also have some other things that you can use, and one of them is called fumed. And if you have oak or other wood with tannins in it, you put this liquid on, that's the fumed, and it makes it look like it's been out in the weather for a year. It just turns it dark. And then you can put a finish over it and seal it. But it gives you that sort of aged look. I've got some shelves that I had to make to display Rubio, and I got red oak and made 5 different shelves. And it's pretty cool because I used the pure on the top, and then I used pine color, and then I used vanilla color, and then I used oak color, and then I used chocolate and Paduke. So I have 5 different colored boards that were all the same board, that you can see a very obvious difference in each one of those colors for that. Yeah.
If you were to wood burn and then use a water-based paints to put the color on the item you burn, then could you put this on and seal the whole thing?
No.
Won't?
No, because you've sealed the wood grain. This bonds to the wood grain. So if you painted it or did something else,
Would you do this first and then paint over it
I don't know why you would want to.
for color? To like if I was making a flower and wood burning it, and I wanted to put the color in the flower.
Oh, in those different little petals of that and do that? You could probably very carefully paint those in with this. The problem is you want to wipe it off, and I think you'd have a hard time
Okay.
unless you've got it really sort of a Q-tips, almost dry, and just rubbed it into there. But it would be a difficult, I think you'd be better off with tints or paints or something else to do that. Because let me see if I brought that. Yeah, this one is a wine bottle stopper that I used Rubio on, and you can see a blue, dark blue on the bottom and a light blue in the middle, and then a variety of other woods that I just glued together. But it has an application sort of like what you're talking about, but I was very careful to get it just in that one area for the color that I wanted. And but some of the colors are very vibrant, and there's one that's harvest gold that has little specks of gold that is there. There's a dark sort of sapphire indigo color. There's a ruby color. There's emerald. There's a whole bunch of really saturated colors, black and charcoal and walnut and mahogany. But it's a pretty interesting product. But for me, the convenience, it's a really nice finish. It's just a natural sort of oil finish, but it's easy. You can see literally in 15 minutes, hey, next I'm on to the, you know, what else am I gonna do now, rather than laboring over a finish.
Would it be impervious to sawdust in 24 hours, or,
Yeah.
like, so if you did it out in your shop, you still,
Yep. No, and you could see that it's not liquid anymore, it's soaked into there. There's nothing coming off of here or nothing to stick to, you know what I'm saying? But it has coated the wood fibers, and now it's gonna dry overnight and bond with those wood fibers. You know
What
I'm
are your
saying?
little white pads?
They're just Scotch-Brite pads. You know, it's a non-scratch 3M, you know, pad. Yeah, no, and the reason you use these is because you use so little of it, this doesn't absorb the material. I could use a t-shirt or a, you know, paper towel or something, but half of it's in my rag. Whereas this, there's almost nothing left here. It all went into what I was doing, so it saves the material that way.
And even though it's, you could call it oil-based, you don't have any rigid on your fingers, you need to wash off with some water or?
I will go wash
over
my
time,
hands.
Or what, I mean, how are your fingers now, are they kind of sticky or?
No, but what happens is it'll dry and my hands will get sort of dry, so I like to wash it off when I get done. But it doesn't hurt my fingers.
Soap and water is just what you normally use.
Yeah, and some of the, you know, orange sort of abrasive stuff helps to, you know, once it starts to dry on your hand, it dries pretty effectively, but
use more gloves.
I could use gloves.
Yeah.
The majority of the time, it's so quick that I go wash my hands right after and I'm done. So, but if I have a big table or something like that, I'll use, you know, sort of a credit card or something just to squeegee it out, you know, to cover more area more quickly, and then work it into there and spread it out as far as I can and then wipe it off, so. And as I said, people mix up too much, they put too much on and they don't wipe off enough. Because you can see I wiped it until nothing else came off on the towel, and then it can dry. And I've had people take it and they go, oh, it's sort of gunky. You didn't wipe it off enough because it's not polyurethane. You're not building up a coat. As soon as it hits the wood fiber, it's done doing its thing there.
Seems like more of a sealer, but I guess that's,
What's that?
seems like more of a sealer, but.
It is. So, and it's water resistant. It's not waterproof. If you really want it to be waterproof, you know, bar sealer or, you know, something else, but from that standpoint, it seems to do a good job for,
Yeah, it seems
So-
like a nice product.
yeah.
I've never been up to that place. Sounds like a-
I got your videos.
Yeah, so I have some pictures of the store if you want to see what the store looks like. Wait a minute, that's not the
It's a
store.
funny looking store.
Yeah. So that's the whole Festool Island. You see all the wood in the background there?
Here, you wanna,
But this
Here.
gives you
You
some
wanna get
sense
the-
of scale.
do you wanna get the light and I'll start this over where everybody can see it? 'Cause it's kinda, there we go.
Yeah, so there's a wall of router bits and then a huge Festool area. And then all the domestic wood's in the back there. The sign up there, you can see I used the shaper on it. But this is some of the exotic wood. And the cool thing is, we've got enough of any one of those to actually make something out. It's not like, well, these are the two boards of winding, and here's a couple boards. So these are all cut-offs from the sawmill. And then you can see there's a lot of Craig stuff, but this will give you a sense of the scale.
God, that's huge.
Yeah, it's great. And then the second one gives you the backside of all the exotic wood. So this is all the domestic wood now, and there's 3 aisles of domestic wood.
It's like Ben's
Yeah. Ah, look out! And then we have lots of plywood with all sorts of different, types of wood veneer. And then this is all of the live edge stuff that we produce in the store. So, figured I'd give you a quick tour.
How's your stock of Baltic birch?
It's great. When you can turn the light on now. When Russia decided to invade and the costs started to go up and we're having problems getting it, we looked at what our annual sales were, and we bought enough to have enough for a year. So we have literally, pallets full of Baltic birch so that we could, offer it for sale, because there were a couple times we couldn't get any 9mm for a month.
Are they 5x5 sheets?
They're all 5x5 sheets.
What's the 3/4 rough price on a 3/4 4x4, 5x5?
You don't wanna know. It's about $197 for a 3/4 inch. $197 for Baltic birch. Yeah, but the price is stabilized now, so. But we bought it and figured we'd sit on it, but somebody came down from Wisconsin and bought 20 sheets of, Baltic birch, cause he couldn't get it up there. I got a call today from somebody in Chicago going, "Do you have Baltic birch? I can't find it anywhere." So I think we made a wise decision to at least have it. And it's not the Baltic birch you get at Home Depot. It's a lot more laminations, no voids, really solid, structural Baltic birch. It's the finest quality. So, and that makes a huge difference.
You said you had a 43-inch sander. What do you charge to bring something in to have it sanded on that?
$75 an hour, and all of that kind of stuff is just $75 an hour. People will bring in stuff to run through the planer, the joiner, or sometimes somebody will pick out wood and they don't have a joiner or a planer, and we'll run it through the joiner on the edge, run it through the planer, match up the edges, get it ready for them to glue up, and it's less than an hour for a tabletop. It's not unusual for me to charge somebody 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes to walk across the street. Everything's right. I tell people the shop is all set up and ready to go. We don't have to build a hot dog stand to be cooking hot dogs. We just go and we're eating hot dogs. So that's a great thing. Now the 43-inch sander, I just got it, and it's got 3 4-inch ports coming out for dust collection, and I have a chip extraction system that I need to set up before I can put that machine into use. But it was $27,000, wide belt sander that's 43 inches wide. So, with what I do, I have to buy the big equipment, but then I can do the big things. But for $75 an hour, it probably takes you longer to drive over than it does for me to do something for you. And a lot of times we'll just do it for people while they wait, or we'll say, go, we're right next to North Prospect, all the mall, and that whole area. We'll say, go have lunch or do something, come back, and get it taken care of for you. Which is nice to have that resource. Somebody brought in some walnut slabs that are literally 48 inches wide. This tree was ginormous, and it's about 9 feet long and 4 feet wide and about 3 inches thick. And he had them cut down in Missouri, and his brother, I think, had this tree, and they cut it down, and on Facebook he saw that they were cutting it into firewood, and he said, "Wait, stop!" And he got it and had it slabbed and dried and brought it to me to make it all flat for him so he could do something. It's pretty wild. I can't even imagine how big that tree must have been.
Oh, God.
And it's walnut, so it's really nice. But, you know, a lot of times people want architectural walnut, and walnut is one of those woods that's graded. You know, this is this finest grade, and, you know, architectural is most expensive because it's just straight lines and even, you know, grain. And I really like, you know, the crotches,
Yes.
the funny parts that, you know, are what make it exciting for me.
Knots and
Oh, yeah,
stuff, yeah.
yeah. And, you know,
It's like a mystery, you know, you cut open it and then, whoa, you know.
so I brought this along. You can probably turn that off. I'll pass this around. This is really interesting, and somebody brought a couple of, a wood company brought a couple logs in, and I'd asked him for if he ever saw it, and he says, no, very rarely do I ever see that. And then he calls me and says, hey, I've got some logs for you, and he brought them over, and they're about this big around, but it's persimmon. And they used to make fairway drivers
It
for
has
golf
black
clubs out
spots
there.
in it, yeah.
What's that?
It has black spots in it.
Oh, yeah. And it's hard as all can be. It's in the same family as ebony. And I figured I cut off this little piece off the end of it before I sliced it up. But it's really cool stuff. It's hard to dry because it's just weird. And I'm hoping that it's gonna turn out. But it has yellow and purple and blue and orange and brown and black, and it's the wildest stuff. So I hope it dries, but I got on the wood forum. The president, Colleen at the university, has a beech tree that they were cutting down because it had problems. And they wanted me to slice it up and dry it, and I put it into the kiln. And when they cut it, they were picking it up and literally water was just pouring out as a stream out of the end of this beech tree. And I thought, oh, okay. And I cut it and I put it into the kiln and dried it, and it turned into pretzels. You know, there was so much water in it that it twisted and it curved, and they, you know, the wood shop at the U of I is making furniture for the house and the president. But we really had to pick through and find some that weren't as bad that they could work with. But I got on the wood forum and I looked up persimmon, and they said, yeah, it's almost as bad as beech. I thought, oh no. So we'll see what happens. But it's been really fun to get all sorts of oddball stuff like hackberry or
When do you find use for that, hackberry?
it's actually pretty cool wood. It's
White and kind of green sometimes.
yeah, and it's got sort of a dark core to it,
We should.
but it has, you know,
It's hard to do.
it is,
Never seen me, I've made a thing or two out of it, so
yeah,
it's not furniture grade.
yeah,
Well, it's anything.
it's different.
It is. We saw some today. We were up north at a sawmill.
Uh-huh.
Man, beautiful stuff. It's just, it stuck out. I mean, he has, up there north by Pekin, they've got a sawmill up there. He's got all sorts of stuff laid up in his oil, and that stuff there stuck out, didn't it?
I bought 2 big pieces of it.
Of hackberry?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can't believe
No.
the figure that it has. It's just,
$2 a board foot.
that's what he charged me.
How much?
$2 a board foot.
Cool.
Yeah.
So here's a couple of other things that I don't know if this went around, but this is spalted maple, which is almost like, did you already see this?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's really cool because of all the figure and the color that's in it. I had some spalted sycamore, which is really cool, and it ended up being quarter sawn, so it had all the little flecks of being quarter sawn, but the spalting in there was really, really wild.
Dustin, show him my table that's spalted on hard maple.
Looks like it's.
I really like spalted wood.
Yeah.
I'll show you,
Me too.
I'll show you a table I just made at Christmas with spalted hard maple.
Did you ever find a good use for sweet gum?
I haven't seen any yet.
There you are.
See there at the top of it.
Ain't no fun to split.
Oh, wow.
I just made that at Christmas.
Yeah.
We got that spalted wood down there or up there at Pekin.
Yeah,
That was $2 a board foot also.
yeah.
Yeah, that was 13 foot long and probably, what,
It was 13 feet long, it was,
2 inches thick.
yeah, it was 2.5 inches thick, 13 inches wide, it was 24 board feet on this one plank.
Wow.
We had it, Bill, and then, that was my share of it, Larry's got the rest.
The ones that this handle came from, is just phenomenal, cause it's got a really dark spider web through the whole thing, but then it has a lot of figure in it, and it has a whole bunch of different colors in it. And it's just, when I got the log, it was weathered on the outside and gray and didn't look like much, and I saw it into it, and it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
check this out.
So we did the same thing.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I've got some other one that it looks like marble. It's blues and grays and different colors, but with the finish on it, it literally looks like Italian marble. I mean, it's really cool. So, wood is so fascinating. Any other questions?
What are your hours, just so
Yeah.
everybody knows?
We're closed on Sundays and Mondays. The rest of the week, it is 10 till 6, and on Saturdays, 10 to 3.
Monday through Friday, or Tuesday.
Tuesday through Friday and then Saturday. And since we work on Saturday, I give my employees Monday off so they really have a weekend. So,
And I think what really makes your store unique is your staff. They're very knowledgeable, very resourceful. I mean, they're a resource and they're amazing.
you know, I go out to other stores and it's hard to find anybody that has a clue.
Yeah.
I went to an electrical supply store looking for a switch for a 220, and the guy at, you know, Springfield Electric didn't know what I was asking for. And it was just a 2-pole switch instead of a 1-pole switch. But he gave me a 4-way switch, and I plugged it in, and as soon as I turned it on, it blew the breaker in not only the sub panel, but the main panel, and fried the switch. It's like, there's $30 down the drain. But that being said, I like when people come in to go greet them and say, is there something you're looking for? And try to help them, you know, and the staff are all trained to know what the equipment is, know what the woods are, being able to help people and actually get service, you know. Gas stations used to be service stations, they'd pump your gas for you.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pump your gas though.
I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the definition of an artist?
A what?
Definition of an artist? And I'm not being.
An artist?
Yeah.
You know, I'll give you an analogy. In the music business, there's a lot of musicians that are very technically proficient, and they can read music and they can play fluently, but they're not creative. And there are very few artists that are musicians that are artists, that can create something out of nothing and come up with a new progression or unusual chords, or, you know, make a melody sound like none of the other songs. And an artist is somebody that is able to take the information that they've accumulated and come up with something new. And, you know, I've always enjoyed doing something that I'm creating something new in the world. I would be bored to tears if I was in the widget business and I bought widgets and I sold widgets and I ordered more widgets and I sold more widgets, and it would make me insane.
So are you either born an artist or not?
You know, you can develop it. I mean, anybody can learn to draw. Some people say I can't carry a song in a paper bag, but if they really are interested in it, they can develop and you know, and learn those things. You can learn to draw if that's something that you really want to do, you know, and it's all experiment, and to not be afraid to try something different or make it up as you go, or, you know, there's so much opportunity, and I see so many potential things, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, you know, my risk threshold is pretty high. You know, some people don't want any risk and they don't want to try anything and they don't want to fail. And, you know, it's sort of like, you know, how many times can you figure out how to invent a light bulb? Well, he didn't fail at it, he succeeded 10,000 times at proving one's wrong before he figured out how to get to that point where he got it right. So, there's some training, you know, I learned color theory and I learned design and balance and form and other things like that. So as I'm making something, you know, I'm looking at the canary wood and the colors in there and what other wood would be nice to go with that and how does that balance out the palette that I'm working with. And, you know, those are all terms that I've learned along the way, but it is all good information that's out there. There's no trade secret there. I had a Psychology of Success tape set by Brian Tracy one time. And Psychology of Success, he starts off talking about time management and all the nuts and bolts of, you know, how you succeed and you know, living your life and your business. And the last tape was this really weird tape that he said, you know, well, there's subconscious energy, there's conscious energy, and there's superconscious energy. And he says, you know, some people learn how to tap into that superconscious energy. He said, you know, Beethoven and Mozart were able to just open up their mind and let the creativity flow through them. They don't, and one of the things he said was, you don't solve problems by thinking about solving problems. You solve problems by posing that idea to your mind and then forgetting about it and let your mind work on it in the background. And you'll wake up in the middle of the night going, that's it, I've got it.
Yeah.
And creativity is that same way, that I can get into a flow from doing something enough that I get into really concentrating on what I'm doing, and it's that flow state where you can accept that superconscious energy into you. And it might be that I'm just playing guitar and all of a sudden you know, where is this coming from? You know, I just hear it and I'm playing it. I'm not trying to think, well, it's this scale and it's this chord and I need to play these notes that go with that. It just flows, and creativity is that same way. You know, how do you come up with a design? You know, I just start off by carving and all of a sudden I go, oh, well, this looks like it needs to be indented there, and maybe I'll put a little ripple here, and you know, just make it up as I go. And the more you do that, you get a library of that worked before, and you build on that. So that's philosophy for tonight.
You've really given us a good program tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I hope so. I hope I gave you something to think about.
Yes.
Thank you.
But definitely come visit us and say hi.
Probably cost us some money.
Okay.
It's, you know, the way I look at it, it's better than giving it to a therapist.
No, thank you, Brian, you were very insightful.
Good.
Yeah, I think we gained a lot tonight, so, thank you.
Well, I like imparting whatever I know and give it away.
So we're all out of time. They're gonna kick us out of here soon. Don't forget the jigsaw up here. If anybody's interested, please see Lon. If you haven't paid your dues, see Bob in the back. Yes.
I forgot to mention, Wood Turner is selling chances on Jet Lake. If anybody's interested, see me. And the other thing is, we've got a 1.5 power shaper that I've got for sale, if somebody's interested.
So you hear that? He's got a 1.5 horsepower shaper for sale and selling tickets for a chance to win a lathe. The Wood Turners.
$40. Only gonna sell for it.
Anything else before we get wrapped up?
Tips.
Tips, yes. Don't forget to put a tip on the table for server, please.
You know, I wish I did.
And have a great evening. Thank you.
I don't.